Special meeting of the Cambria Community Center's CSD to order, and would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The agenda that I got a chance to look at 10 minutes ago, we're established a quorum, and we do have an opportunity for the public to comment. I do have one speaker slip, but this being a special meeting, it can only be applying to the issue at hand, which is this particular rate study that we're ready to discuss. So that would be Mr. LeBlanc. Could you speak on that subject, please? Oh, shoot. Here.
Thank you. LeBlanc, licensed geologist and geophysicist, certified engineering geologist and hydrogeologist. What I wanted to address to you is the cause of your need to raise those rates, and that is what I call wasteful spending and credibility with the community, which I think are real important issues. They were when I was on the board, and I think they still are. We've been told in the past that there was enough water to end the moratorium and issue new permits in the middle of a drought. That delayed the board taking action for water restrictions, which has put us in a bigger deficit than we would have been otherwise. Now you've implemented severe water restrictions that prohibit outside irrigation, costing ratepayers lost landscaping because plants are dying. You've told the community you were building an emergency brackish seawater desal that turns out to actually be treating sewer discharge polluted groundwater. You're spending money like drunken sailors. It reminds me of the Navy A-12 Avenger 2 program, where a plane was never built, but billions of dollars were spent. And this is on a project that has no permits, likely never will be permitted, and may never provide a drop of water to this community. The permits are still outstanding. The CCSD has never done the standard engineering benefit cost analysis for this project, something required by licensed engineers, and still cannot tell Cambrians the actual cost of this project. So you're moving forward with something you don't even know what the end dollar amount is. Water is available from farmers. If necessary, you could bring a ship down from, fill it up with glacier water in Alaska and provide us water to get us through if it got that bad. But it looks like El Nino's on the way, and last time we had El Nino, we had massive flooding on the Central Coast. And I'm not sure we have an emergency, because last year, while people could still water outside, the district, according to your website, used 386 acre-feet approximately from May 1st to December 30th. You said we had 400 to 500 acre-feet of water. And if we had 400 to 500 acre-feet of water...
Thank you, Mr. Blank. Please conclude
there is
your
no
remarks,
emergency.
please. Thank you. I'm seeing no additional public comment. Let me... oh, okay. Please, I think, please join the podium.
I just had the pleasure of reading again some of Louis Sullivan's kindergarten chats, which some of you might well know, being engineers and architects. And in kindergarten chats, he tries to make people, he wrote this in the early 20th century, He tries to make people understand democracy a bit better. I hope that this town has a turnout of at least 72.6% on Tuesday of the registered voters. People are saying it's going to be one of the lowest turnouts ever in this state, and I see democracy going drippy drip down the drain if that happens. So the democracy depends upon you board members, it depends upon everybody in the audience, depends upon everybody at home, and if your conscience doesn't bother you, if you don't go to vote on Tuesday, I will send up to the muses capitulations and excuses for you, but I won't really do it wholeheartedly. Please vote on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen. That being said, I must apologize in that just a few minutes ago, maybe half an hour ago, I received the packet, and I know it's because people have been working extremely hard. So if members of the public haven't had a chance to look at the packet or the contents therein, don't be surprised, none of the board members were able to do so too. So very likely, Mr. Gruber, after you introduce this presentation, very likely I'd like to take a short break so that I can review, the board members actually can review some of this data offline so they can prepare their questions. So with that in mind, General Manager, can you move on to special business meeting business item A, 3A?
Thank you, President Berenger. Welcome back, and board members. Today, item 3, special board meeting, item A would be receive and discuss water and sewer rate study from Bartle Wells and Associates. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alex Handlers, our consultant who has been working on this for us. And Alex, if you would, do we have it loaded up for you? Were we giving you ample time to be able to do that? Okay.
It's all loaded up. Oh, are they, oh, excuse me, can we get the presentation loaded up on the screen? Thank you. I will note that based on input we received at the last board meeting, I know not every board member was here, but there was kind of consensus from the 4 members that were to focus the first stage on the emergency water rates needed to fund the emergency water supply project. So that's what this presentation is about. It really focuses on the emergency water rates that you need to get rolling on with your Prop 218 notices if you want to get the rates in place in time to hopefully finance the project. And I will try to make this work. Well, there we go. So what I'm going to talk about is just a real quick background on the emergency water supply based on the information I understand. Go in a little bit to the rate alternatives, and I know we got some conceptual guidance last time, but I just wanted to put it out there. I know not all the board members were there. And then open it up for discussion. The goal of the meeting today is to get input for coming up with the maximum rates that are going to be included in the Prop 218 notices that have to go out soon in order to hit your public hearing in July. So that's what we're looking for. We got to finalize the emergency water rates in the next couple of days or so. Emergency water supply, I think most folks here, maybe not everyone agrees on this, but I think a lot of folks are familiar with the background. This community is 100% reliant on the groundwater from the Santa Rosa and San Simeon Creek aquifers. These are surface water generated aquifers. They get drawn down during the dry summer months. They can get very critically low by late summer and early fall, even in a normal year. And I know you've had ongoing threats of seawater intrusion into your groundwater aquifers. You've been studying these issues for years. In the rainy season, the aquifers are replenished, provided there's adequate rainfall. Unfortunately, in recent years, there has not been adequate rainfall. California is now in the third year of a pretty severe drought. 2013, the driest year on record in California since they began keeping records of such rainfall. And what's happened is your long-term water supply problem, with the threat of seawater intrusion into the aquifer, has been greatly exacerbated by the drought over the last few years. The flows in the creeks have been way down. There's been minimal recharge. The groundwater levels are going down as measured in the wells. And I know the district has done some analysis indicating that you may run out of water. The supply is not necessarily there to meet the projected demands that this district usually has in the upcoming months in the dry season, which is why you've implemented your Stage 3 water emergency rates. Also, I think folks know there's risk of permanent damage to the aquifers. If things get too bad, the aquifers might lose their capacity to retain water, and that has happened in some other places. This slide shows the drought in California. This is a recent update from the U.S. Drought Monitor. It was just released today, actually. You'll notice Cambria is right in the center of the darkest area. Severe drought is bad enough. Extreme drought is very bad, but they came up with a new word, exceptional drought, to kind of describe the severe situation that's hitting the Central California. And you're right in the heart of it. True, it's not exactly the same for every single valley in here, but you get the overall picture. This is a major drought. You are severely being hit. Your water supply is at risk, which is why the Emergency Water Supply Project is deemed to be vital to your water supply, not just in the near term, but also in the long term to prevent seawater intrusion, which could ruin your aquifers. What I've learned from working with the district is, number one, this is not a quickly decided project. The district's been studying this for many, 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 many years. I've heard numbers as high as 20+ years. They haven't pulled the trigger yet for a variety of reasons. The evaluation of alternatives has taken place. I saw a report by CDM Smith that looked at a wide range of alternatives. The district is pursuing what's actually the lowest cost project alternative that can reliably meet the local water supply needs. Unfortunately, it's an expensive project, and as a prior speaker mentioned, originally I think there were talks of ocean desal. This is not ocean desal. This is using brackish groundwater from an existing district well along the San Simeon Creek. You're going to need to recover costs for this project, and this is a very expensive project. It's going to have a major impact here on the district and the district's customers. So I'm just here to present you the factual information. Good news is that originally the project cost was estimated at about $15 million in the CDM report. The district, from speaking with the district engineer, has been working aggressively to try to get the project cost down, to try to scale back the project scope and all the specifics that go into it. And good news is they have scaled it back substantially. Final costs won't be known until the project's actually bid out. Despite the best engineering estimates, no one knows 100% reliability what the project is going to cost. But good news is the numbers we're hearing are far less than $15 million. The district for many years has been aggressively pursuing grant funding, whether it was through the Army Corps of Engineers or here at various programs in California. Unfortunately, no grant funding has ever been released and awarded to the district. However, the district is, I guess, one of the finalists for a substantial chunk of grant funding that can be used to defray the project's cost. Everyone's got their fingers crossed, but it's not guaranteed. If the district receives grant funding, that can be used to reduce the charges that are going to be shown in this presentation, because we are assuming a maximum kind of worst case scenario. The assumptions I used in developing the rates, number one, we used $8.8 million project cost estimate. Again, the actual costs are not finalized. Because of that, we built in a 20% contingency for purposes of going through the Prop 218 process. We assume the capital cost would be 100% debt financed. And two sub-assumptions there are, one, that you can get debt financing considering the financial condition of your water enterprise over recent years. And number two, the water enterprise has had to borrow $2.1 million of interim loans from the general fund to get this project rolling off the ground. We assume that those loans would be paid back to the general fund to replenish the district's financial health. So we're assuming all debt financing for the $8.8 million plus 20% contingency. The hope is things will come in lower. On top of that, you've got some substantial operating costs for operating a desal facility. It's a very energy-intensive process. The cost estimates received from CDM Smith were that it would cost $380,000 per year if you ran this facility full bore for 6 months of the year. In reality, you probably don't need to run it that long, so those costs would be prorated based on actual operation. However, a portion of those costs does need to get funded year-round. You've got to keep the system maintained and ready to go when needed, so we assumed that that was about $50,000 per year for facility maintenance, with the remaining costs being allocated over the water supply during the high-need months. Again, we did not assume any grant funding at this stage since nothing has been awarded. There's no concrete money that's been promised to the district. A couple of other assumptions we had to make. Part of these costs are recovered by fixed costs, part by variable costs. The variable costs have to be recovered based on, for example, water usage. The response from this community due to the emergency drought situation has been overwhelming. Residential use during the first billing period for which data was available was down 50%. Overall water use down 40% from a typical normal year. That's tremendous considering that your water use was already extremely low. Because of that, and because of the increased costs needed, so people are going to fund the project, it'll be rate increases. We assumed that water use is never going back to a historical normal year, that due to the response so far and the higher, and what people have done, and higher cost per unit of water, that there would be a reaction on the customer side that would result in a 20% permanent cutback in water use due to the lasting effects of the drought response and price elasticity. We also assume that during those peak need uses from July through October, when the aquifers are running dry, that there would be 25% cutback in use during those months. Might there be more? There well may be, but we had to use some reasonable assumptions in our projections. Cost recovery for the emergency water supply project includes 3 components to try to make it as clear as possible. The 2 components are for capital cost recovery. These are the costs for paying for debt service for the facility itself and that minimal amount of maintenance costs for the facility. To try to fairly recover these costs from the customer base, partially based on everyone contributing something, but users paying more based on their level of use, we were given some direction that a little over a third of the cost will be recovered from fixed charges. So 35% of capital costs recovered from fixed monthly charges that people pay every month regardless of water use. 65% of the capital costs recovered from the ongoing water charges that are paid based on metered water use. So you use more, you pay more. So that's a big component of cost recovery. On top of that, when this facility is in operation, the district's going to need to fund these operating costs for operating the desal, the brackish water, groundwater desal. So there's additional operating cost recovery that would be funded, conceivably somewhere from July to October. The district is going to have to be, monitoring when these rates go into effect to make sure it's fairly applied. So when the district plans to use the facilities, they can kick in this rate. So people using water during these critical months are going to be paying for the actual operation of the facility. First, I'm going to talk about the capital cost recovery. We mentioned 35% of the capital costs recovered from fixed meter charges. What does that work out to be? About $13 per bi-monthly billing period for a typical residential connection for all your single-family homes. It's about $6.50 a month. On the commercial multifamily side, you have a much more limited number of customers here. We had talked about recovering fixed costs based on meter capacity and the demand being placed on your water system from the various meter sizes. So these charges, or the commercial size charges, would be based on meter size, with a small commercial account paying a lower charge than, for example, a large hotel that puts a lot more demand on your water system. It conceivably would be funding a proportionally larger share of the costs of the capital costs of the emergency water supply. 65% of the capital costs I mentioned would be recovered from water quantity charges. So people are going to pay based on use for roughly 2/3 of the cost of funding the facility. And we had a few alternatives that we had kind of conceptually talked about last time. And I wanted to just run through them a little bit here with some real numbers now that we've kind of have what we think are the final numbers for inclusion in the rate notices. And again, I'm pointing out these are the maximum rates that would be included in the notice. Alternative A was a uniform rate for all water use. Everyone pays $2.95 for all their water use throughout the year as a surcharge on top of the regular water rates. Works out to be a little under 40 cents per 100 gallons of water. Alternative B, what if you went with a tiered rate structure, a little more akin to what you currently have with your current rate structure? And when you have a tiered rate structure, you can have lower impacts to folks with lower levels of use under the approach that, hey, if everyone used low levels of use, you probably wouldn't need this emergency water supply facility. So we're going to disproportionately recover more costs from the folks who are putting more pressure on the water system and requiring additional capacity in the facility. So this would be a 3-tiered rate structure. We came up with the first 4 units bi-monthly would be billed at a $1.50 surcharge. It's a little higher, I know, than the board mentioned last time, and I apologize, but to try to get these numbers work and keep everything in a reasonable basis, this is what we came up with. Folks who are only using 1 or 2 units, they only have to buy a couple of units so they can keep their bill down. That works out to be a surcharge of 20 cents per 100 gallons for funding approximately 2/3 of the capital costs of the emergency water supply facility. Those costs would go up to $3 for 5 to 16 units bi-monthly, and then up to $4.50 at the upper end, which works out to be about 60 cents per 100 gallons. So that's the 3-tiered rate structure. And then we received, some good input from the board when we were talking about different rate structure ideas. One was, what if there were escalating rates? The first rate is the lowest cost, then the next rate's a little more, and it escalates up to some level, and then after that, it's pretty much a uniform rate. So you're kind of benefiting folks on a sliding scale of folks who, at the lowest levels of water use. Everyone gets the benefit of this, whether they're a large customer or small customer. So this is what we came out mathematically to make the numbers work. The rates would need to look $1 per unit. That's per 748 gallons is a CCF, 100 cubic feet. For the first unit, escalating to $3.90 once you get up to 8 units bi-monthly, and beyond, all water use would be charged at that level. That works out to be about 13 cents per 100 gallons for the first unit, up to 52 cents for the 8th and beyond unit. Those were for recovering the capital costs. And it gets a little confusing because we also have some options for recovering the operating costs during periods of facility operation. So again, paralleling the same 3 quantity charge alternatives that we just discussed. Alternative A, uniform rate for all water use. So if this facility is operating from July through October, there would be a surcharge of $3.10 per unit of water used during that period to fund the operating costs of the facility. Again, about 41 cents per 100 gallons. Alternative B was the three-tiered approach with the lowest rate in Tier 1, $1.50 per unit. Looks very similar to the capital surcharge. That's just mathematically the way the numbers panned out. So about 20 cents per 100 gallons, surcharge July to October, whenever this facility is in operation, escalating up to about 67 cents per 100 gallons. You see it on your bill as $5 per unit, per 100 cubic feet. And again, the escalating rates, in this case going from 75 cents to 4.25, anything beyond that would be billed at 4.25. So, 10 cents per unit for the lowest levels of use to a little less than 60 cents per 100 gallons, to put it in understandable terms. Most people don't think in terms of 100 cubic feet. So those are the maximum rates shown. What are the impacts? Good question. We made a table here that compares the impacts for different types of customers under the three alternatives. Now, the thing I normally recommend not doing is trying to compare, well, look, alternative A is higher than alternative C here, and B, trying to really look at the impacts and look backwards. I think you should pick something conceptually what you think is the best approach, because different folks use different amounts of water throughout the year, so there's no such thing as a median use customer. Someone at the median use may use this level part of the year, and they might be up to 10 units in the summer and maybe down to 3 or 4 during a winter month, so people kind of tend to move around. But this is what we find are the monthly impacts. And again, we're assuming, based that compared to a normal year water bill, that under the new paradigm, folks are going to be cutting back 20% in response to the rate increases and to permanent cutbacks in water use, since what they've learned responding to drought, which I think is, people may do more. People have been doing more. So my fear is that's not enough. But what would the impact be? Someone currently using 4 units, cutting back to 3 units, would see an increase under the uniform rate right here. This is for the capital, for the capital charges of about $10.93 if it was uniform rate, or $8.75, $8.60 alternative C. These would be billed throughout the year, every single month. And again, these are the costs that are recovering costs to fund the capital facility. You have got to pay that debt service and that minimal maintenance cost, no matter if the facility is operating or not. So this is a monthly impact. Folks get billed bi-monthly currently. I know there's been talk of moving to monthly billing. Who knows when that's going to happen or if it is, but so this is what the impacts would be. A low-use customer would see an impact of, $8 to $10 per month. A higher-use customer, a moderately high customer, 75% of the bills we anticipate are going to be at or below this level of use. Could see, impacts of, roughly $18 to $20 a month. The average bill, residential bill, we expect will be around 8 units bi-monthly, 4 units per month, somewhere in the $15, $16 range. In addition, if and when that facility is operating, and I know you would be operating it now if you could, it's not going to be operated every year. If there is rainfall that comes some years, fantastic, you don't need to operate it. But with climate change, the long-term drought, I think people are expecting you are going to need this facility a lot more in future years, threat of seawater intrusion. So these costs on the right here would be the O&M surcharges that would only be applied during the periods of operation. We also had some sample commercial and multifamily bills to see what the impacts would be. So these are big impacts. No one's shying away from that. But these are based on the maximum proposed rates, no grant funding, 8.8 million facility with 20% contingency added in. So again, the hope is that these costs can come down. Nobody can guarantee it. This is just mathematically what it works out to be to fund your facility. No one likes hearing about rate increases, but the mantra is here, if this is going to proceed, you've got to pay the bills, you've got to fund the cost of operation. There's no way around it. If you don't, your water supply is at risk, not just near term, but I think long term. Next steps. Due to the time constraints, and I apologize, it's been a real scramble from our end to try to get all the information worked through to a point where we're comfortable with it and comfortable with the numbers. But we're there now, finally. Today, we're hoping to get the final input so the district can finalize rates to put in the Prop 218 notice. You are not taking any action on adopting any rates today. That would not happen until you mailed your notices out, waited the 45 days, and held your public hearing on July 24th. Some agencies don't have any board interaction on rates until they actually get to the Prop 218. So I think it's good that you've had community and board input throughout the process so far. So it's not a surprise to anybody, but you're not taking action today. But we do need to know what to include in the notice, the maximum rates that are going to be there to inform people of, so that when you do need to start charging these rates or adopt the rates, you'll have the financial adequacy there that you can actually fund your project. Again, I know the hope is that the rates won't need to be quite as high as shown here. And again, the plan is, if you can get grant funding, that would be a real boon that could help substantially cut the charges that folks need to pay, particularly the capital charges. And that, concludes what we wanted to present today. We are going to be back in future months to continue our conversation about water and sewer rates in general, because you do need substantial rate increases there. And the one thing I reiterated last time as well, due to the financial condition of your water enterprise, just passing the emergency drought rates, we hope is going to be adequate to secure debt financing. There are additional measures the district can take to try to reassure potential lenders, maybe having a backstop, some additional fund reserves set aside, but there are no guarantees, and often it's a negotiating process with lenders to try to get through their credit approval process. So keep that in mind. Our, one fear is, without also pursuing, getting the regular water rates up to adequate levels to maintain financial stability, that would be considered a credit negative that could impact the ability to finance the project. But we can't guarantee that, because the rates haven't been adopted, and all these conversations have only taken place on conceptual levels so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gruber, if you don't have anything to add right now, I would maybe just, is it the pleasure of the board to take 10 minutes just so that we can go through our package and then ask questions? I would like to adjourn for 10 minutes so that I, if nothing else, I can get it. And by the way, I did watch the video on the way back, so I was on the plane and I was getting a little bit ill. I think it was the turbulence when I was watching the video, but yeah, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to direct your attention to pages 9 and 10 in your packet. If you're interested in looking at the numbers that were contained up there,
Right.
You'll find a representation of them on page 9 and 10.
And there was a slide 15. Let's see, 9 and 10. 9 and 10?
Page 9, at the bottom right-hand corner, shows a summary of the emergency water supply rates, including the alternative A, B, and C for the water quantity charges.
Which page is it?
Oh, that was page,
12.
I'm sorry, this was.
12. Okay, thank you.
I have a different, page 12 in the middle of the page 9 in the lower right-hand corner.
I see
So
what you
my
mean.
sta-
Okay.
Thank
Right.
you, Mooney.
So we'll reconvene at 1:15. Public comment portion of the meeting has been completed, but what we're going to do is, if anybody has a question for our presenter, feel free to bring one up. Did somebody wanted to, I know, oh, Mr., good old, yeah, Yeah, no, now's a good time. Just, so this is not really public comment, but it's a question for, please ask the question. No, we'll start with Jerry, and then we'll follow by Tony, and then we'll follow, if you want to stand back there and hold up your sign, you can do that, Mr. Blanc, but, okay, then it'll be, do you have a question, Mr. Blanc, also, or no? Well, the slip is public comments over. If you have a question for the presenter, that would be great. Mr. Gruber, all right, I'm sorry. Jerry McKinnon, please.
Otherwise known as Senor Gringo. Now then, the pages are numbered. On the lower right-hand corner, page 14. Page 14 suggests the budget for the water department. Does this income include a kind of a rate increase, or does this a projection of what we have now?
Yes, the projections include cost increases for the emergency supply project, as well as rates increases
So
to fund
then-
it. So it includes, yeah, the water supply
All right, so that
emergency
it
charges.
does include then that we're going to have a reserve at the end of every year.
Yeah, it's roughly balanced budgets. Hopefully, we try to keep it so you weren't continually running deficits.
Well,
Your
but-
fund reserves have been drawn down. I think we show, roughly balanced budgets for a couple of years, then very slowly trying to, who knows what the reality is going to happen a few years down the line, but very slowly trying to put a little bit aside each year so you can try to get your water fund reserve back to what's considered a healthy, prudent minimum level for
Okay.
long-term operations or capital needs.
Sir, I'm looking at the yellow at the top,
Yep.
and it says down at the bottom, underneath the yellow, beginning water fund reserves.
Jerry, it's page 17, not page 14.
Well, look in the lower
Yeah.
right-hand corner.
Yeah. No, he's right. He's correct. It's page 17 in the agenda packet. We had numbered it 14 in the lower right-hand corner. And I'm on the, it's the
Okay,
cash flow
all right.
projection page.
Either or, not only but also, 17 and 14. So is this projection of water fund reserves based upon new rates?
I think he's asking if there are water rates.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so that makes us a healthy district then, so far as the water department is concerned.
If you adopt regular rate increases to fund operations, which are not being discussed today, and if you adopt these emergency water supply surcharges.
Sure, but you are
Correct.
proposing that we adopt those things in order to have balanced budgets for our water department, as well as build up a reserve.
Exactly.
Okay, have you given us a variety of kinds of rate increases, or is this based on a specific rate increase?
This is just a base case draft cash flow projection that has everything built in here for purposes of determining what your revenue requirements are if you want to restore balanced budgets, fund a prudent minimum level of capital. We haven't gotten to the regular rate increases yet, of which there may be different options of how is the board, what level of rate increase is the board and the community comfortable with or not comfortable with.
As I suggested the
Yeah.
last time, this is my way of skinning the cat. You gotta know how much money you need, and then you raise the money. I don't want us
Yes.
just raising money and deciding how we're gonna spend it. If we're gonna operate a water department, we need these dollars. How many dollars does it take us to operate this water department as well as come up with the reserve? And your answer is right here.
Correct. That's
Thank you.
exactly what we did. Yeah.
And, okay, the next question.
Tony Church, Cambria resident. I was just wondering, how many years has this been spread over? Is it 5, 15, 20, 30?
Oh, we assumed that the capital charges would be spread over approximately 20 years.
Okay. And the other question is, if we don't get the general rates increased, How are we going to be able to get funding for this if we don't get a grant? In other words, this is going to be held up even further because we're now not going to do another 218 on the general rates until much later on. So therefore, no banks will look at it until that's been approved.
Well, nobody knows what the banks are going to be comfortable with or not comfortable with. You come into looking for financing in a much stronger position if you've adopted regular rates to support balanced budgets and the emergency water supply rates to fund the facility. In this case, we're taking it one step at a time. The first step is just because it's a lot to throw at the public at once. So it's just for the emergency water supply. Is it possible that every lender out there will say, hey, we're not comfortable with this? It's possible, but the hope is that having these emergency water supply rates in place and adding some potentially additional security features to the financing will hopefully get through the credit approval process of some lenders.
But
it cannot be guaranteed.
Isn't that exceedingly hopeful? Because in our current financial status, that banks will look at funding such a big project when the rates have not been approved?
Well, the emergency water supply rates will have been approved ostensibly to fund this, with the goal that that's hopefully adequate enough. It's hard to say. I will tell you, I've been surprised out there. We've worked for some other agencies that have faced some pretty dire financial situations, and they've been able to do enough to get the financing. I can't guarantee it in this case. Honestly, nobody can, and I know Mark Northcross has talked with various lenders as well. So no one knows 100%.
I
Yeah,
understand that, but
yeah.
the fact that we're not in a financially good position at this
Doesn't
moment,
help your case, yeah.
it's going to be look pretty bad to a bank, I would have said.
Yes,
Sorry.
it doesn't help. No, I agree with you, and that's the point, yeah, I agree with you.
Okay,
It doesn't
thank you.
strengthen your case that you don't have balanced budgets over here, even though you're adopting rates for the water supply over on the other side.
Well, after Mr. Blanc, but the next gentleman, state your name when you come up, please. Yeah, there you go.
I'm Lou Blanc, and first question that I had was, you made comments regarding seawater intrusion and drawing down of our water levels. Are you licensed as an engineer or a geologist in the state of California?
I'm just commenting on things I've read and some of the studies that have been put out there.
Okay, well,
My understanding of the situation.
in order
yeah.
to do that appropriately in the state without practicing geology or engineering without a license, which is a violation of the California Code of Regulations, then you need to cite the studies that you were looking at when you make those claims, because I want you to know I disagree with the comments you made. Okay, and secondly, I don't see why you just don't tell people right up front that if we've got something like 3,700 bills that we send out from the CCSD, at least it was when I was on the board, I'm not sure the exact number now, and they're going to have to pay for a $15 million project, that's about $4,000 for each one of those ratepayers that gets a bill. It just seems to me that that's one of the first things that you should be telling them, and then how you're going to finance that, what kind of interest you're going to pay. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yes, sir?
My name is Paul Schmidt. I'm a full-time resident of Cambria. And my question is, you have in here some water use assumptions, the 40%, 50% based on previous years and the last period. You know that we're prohibited of using any outside water. And I don't know about, just my opinion is that when that outside water gets turned back on, this 40% is going to go away.
I agree with you, and what we had assumed was that if this facility comes online, some of these restrictions that have been put in place with the rates and other mandatory requirements would potentially be lifted. There wouldn't be these, huge penalties for going over the water budget allocations. I'm just assuming. So I assumed that even though the community has gotten its water down by 40%, residences by 50%, there would be some bounce back. So we assumed long-term water use would be 20% lower than what was previously the historical norm, partly as a lasting effect from the drought response, and also due to price elasticity. As water rates tend to increase, and you're certainly going to be paying more if all this stuff goes through, that people tend to purchase less from a financial
So
side.
all this is based on all the prohibited water use going away?
We assumed that, not all of it going away, but that people would cut back from a normal year,
It
not
just,
40%, but 20%.
On their own, not by edict?
Right.
Yeah, by 20%, people could.
Okay, that
cut back.
20% seems a little high to me, but,
Well, the danger is underestimating it, and then the rates are inadequate to fund your facility.
okay.
So this
Thank
is
you.
something that, I want to say something about the Prop 218 and the California Constitution. The district is prohibited from charging rates that exceed the cost of service. Now, as you go through finances every year, no one knows what everything's going to cost, how much water is going to be sold. But this is something that gets monitored over time. So if water use was to spike back up to pre-drought levels or beyond, you'd find yourself generating more funds than you needed, and the district wouldn't need to implement the full rates that were in place at the time. I've seen other agencies do this. But for financial planning, we wanted to be reasonable. We didn't want to assume 40% cutback, but we sure didn't want to assume that there'd be no long-term cutback in supply. I've seen other agencies assume that and get bitten from that, and then the rate increases are inadequate. They have to go right back out again. But good point you made.
Ms. Bettenhausen?
I'd like to follow up on that, just so I understand what you're saying. On page 13 in the middle, or page 10 on the lower right, all my pages have two numbers, so I never know quite, but the lower page number in the middle is page 13. And there it talks about the projected monthly emergency water supply surcharge impacts. I wrote on the top there quickly, as you went through it, above bi-monthly use, 20% conservation, I wrote compared to what base? Does this figure mean that if I am using 4 units now, I should look at 3 because that would be another 20% reduction from what I'm currently using after we have put in all of the surcharges and reduced my consumption dramatically? What is the base that you are referring to, or perhaps you're referring to some historical number, as you just did? I don't know what you're referring to. What point in history of use are you using as the base to talk about these units bi-monthly?
Yeah, we did some analysis of historical water use to figure out how many customers, how many bills were at 4 units and 5 units and 6 units, et cetera. That's why we try to show a range of customer types here.
Right.
For example, currently, you've got about 25% of your single-family residential bills are at 4 or below. That's changed now with the drought response. Now, so we assume that, yes, there would be some long-term cutback of about 20%, as we just mentioned. That is built into the rates as well.
No, stop. I usually follow things
Yeah,
pretty
no,
well, but I didn't quite follow what you're saying now. Are you saying that these wonderful pages in the back, which you've got of commercial, all these great graphs of actual use historically, and again, I congratulate you on getting them, for which I've been asking for 12 years. Congratulations. But are you saying that the bi-monthly use will include 20% additional conservation to what people are using on the 29th of May, 2014? 20% additional conservation?
No. We assumed 20% conservation compared to historical water use. You're already below that level now with a 50% residential cutback, but we assumed once the facility was in place, some of those restrictions would be lifted. People would be able to use water again without threat of, paying large penalties, where originally, I guess, they were worried about having their water shut off. So we assumed that people's water use would come back towards normal, but wouldn't get all the way there. It would still be down about 20% long-term. Just to build in to the projections, as I mentioned, you've got to be a little bit, conservative when you do these things, or else the rates will be inadequate. So if you historically used 4 units of water, during this drought, maybe you cut back to 2 or 3 in the last month, but we assume your use would bump back up to, if you historically use 4 units, now with the new rates and the new paradigm, you'll be using 3 units,
Yeah.
which I think is a reasonable assumption, and we had to keep it whole numbers, so that one
Right,
goes from
right.
4 to 3, it's really 25%.
So
So if you
you-
use 3 units, here's what the cost will be for the emergency water
Right.
supply in that
Okay.
table. If you use 10 units, here's what the cost will be on
Right.
top of your
Right.
regular bill. Yeah.
But nobody should look at this page and assume that their actual use is represented accurately in the averages, because they might, yeah.
No,
So
that's
this-
what- yeah.
This,
Good point.
the U is plural and not singular when you talk about U. It's an average of use, okay?
That's why we try to show the impacts not just on an average bill, but on a range of bills,
Right,
understanding
right,
that
right.
different people are at different levels,
Yeah.
and that even the same person could be at different levels for different bi-monthly billing periods. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
so
wanted
this-
to, yeah, we
The
call it
letter to the
average.
editor today in the Cambrian, they talk about the dramatic reduction of use, all the way down to 2 units from, 8 or 12, whichever it was. Now, if you do that, you are contributing dramatically to a 40% reduction of use, but somebody else might, you
You're
might
right.
question, and fortunately, Director Robinette always asks this question about averages and medians, and I want to just say, this is all numerical averaging that has only slight clarity about individual meters and what they actually use.
Well, if you just pick the average alone, that would be true, but we did show a range here. So,
And I
yeah.
appreciate that
Yeah.
very much, because that does address the question a bit more. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people that were using 20 or 25 units and no longer are doing that because of no longer doing outdoor watering might be reducing even greater. And we have a lot of, tanks all over town, so I agree, it's not going to jump back up, even if we raise the, allow additional usage. Mr. Webb?
Thank you. My name is Jim Webb, local resident, and I had a question again on page 17, 14, the one with the yellow on the top. And I'm looking at the, under expenses, and I'm looking at the, really the emergency water supply expenses, and the combined total I see is emergency water supply project, 2,100,000. Those are monies that have already been spent, is that correct?
I wouldn't want to characterize it as money that's been spent. It's money that's been authorized or appropriated by the board,
Okay,
but not
does-
yet spent.
Okay, does that include the 500,000 that was just appropriated?
Yes. Yeah,
That was just approved last week?
that was just approved, right.
Okay. Then I had one question. Okay, so that does include that. One question about, if I were having trouble making payments on my house, and I was falling behind every month, and I could conceivably go to the bank and ask to refinance whatever monies I owed, and try to bring things into alignment. However, if I then also tried to go to the bank and get a new loan for an addition on my house, you would think they might look askance at that and say, well, maybe you better take care of this position where you're in arrears before you go deeper in debt to add on this mother-in-law quarters or what have you. And I just wondered what the thinking was. It seems like the order in which the 218 votes are being proposed is precisely that. We're going out to get money for the addition before we're taking care of making the books sound with the current water fund and wastewater fund. Is that correct? Have I characterized that fairly?
Well, if I could respond to that, actually, your comment would be best directed to the board. The last couple of meetings that have occurred, Bartle and Wells have brought forth rates or strategies that would bring the operating funds, the enterprise funds, into alignment with projected needs. The board felt that focusing at least one of these public information meetings on just the emergency water supply and going forward with the 218 just on the emergency water supply was a vote or a protest vote opportunity that they wanted to consider putting before the public. And I'd like to turn it over to the board to really answer your question.
Yeah,
Because this
Sure.
was a decision that got made
And
up there.
I think that the public, Mary Webb, who you may know, was insistent that we separate the issues. It was also clear from what I was watching anyway, that, actually I was at that previous meeting where some directors were looking for an actual vote, even though a 218 isn't a vote. That's another issue. And, it's an opportunity for the community to express their desires. And in reality, what we're doing is we scheduled the rate study to occur this year. And we started that effort last year. We actually contracted with the consultant last year. Right now, we're in an emergency situation. We have weeks, each week that goes by, in the event we don't have rain in October and or November, the financial impact to this community is far greater than what could be conceived. So we're making sure that this is the direction that we can go. We are going that direction anyway. It would be irresponsible for us not to have a project in place to save us forever. I'm not saying this is a solution forever, but this is a solution that'll save us for the next couple of years until we can get something more in place. So it's the only responsible thing we can do, I think, is to move this forward. So because our new interim finance director raised the issue that we can't get interim funding unless we go forward with this project, that's what we're doing. We're going forward with the project.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I understand that. It's just, I must have missed something, because at the one meeting, I saw we were going to have a 218 ballot with 3 different rates. One for the emergency water project, one for the water department, and one for the wastewater department. And then the next time the subject came up, we were just having, although eventually we'll need 3 different ballots.
Yeah.
But we're just going to have one ballot on the emergency water project. And I guess I just missed when it was decided that that would go first,
Well,
and the other 2 would be delayed.
One is an emergency situation that we're in. There's no doubt about it. That's the most important thing for us to do. We don't want to be sending out a 218 notice every 5 minutes, and also there's the clarity for the customer, because I do believe that those people that think we have El Nino and we don't have a problem will have an opportunity to focus on that one issue, and focus on that one issue rather than having so much confusion where you check box A or box B. It became, within the staff and within the board, obviously something that would
I
be
just wondered
confusing.
when that got decided. Was that at the last?
It was the last
meeting?
meeting, probably.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you. Without any, does any director have a question for our consultant? We'll start from the left. Director Rice?
I appreciate how quickly you put this together, and wow, I don't have enough time to really read through it and understand it completely, but if I could get a couple of questions answered regarding the emergency water supply cost recovery. There's, I'm looking specifically at your page 43, page 46 in the agenda packet. 43 in the bottom corner. 46 in the agenda packet, if you're looking in the middle. Table 31, yes, thank you. Table 31, that's a good way to say it. It says the residential charge per dwelling unit is $13, and then let's just go alternative B, because that's the one I'm focused on for myself right now, so then it would be for just the emergency water supply, in addition to whatever else I'm paying, it would be $13 base, right? Added to whatever the fixed charge is.
Let me point you to a different table that I think
Okay.
has it better. In the front of page section, the lower, what page is it?
Where am I, what page am I?
9 and 10.
Yeah,
In the lower right.
the lower right-hand corner,
9 and
page
10,
9.
okay.
That is the chart that shows a summary of all the emergency water supply charges. So that's
all
page
of them.
12 in the middle of the page.
Okay,
And you can see how that chart shows on the left, the capital cost recovery, and on the right, the operating cost recovery.
so if I use one unit, I'm looking at $13 plus, and I'm looking at alternative B, plus $1.50 for the capital cost recovery, plus $1.50 operating cost recovery, so I'm looking at $16.
Yeah, and that operating cost recovery is only during the
Only
months of
when it's being
operation.
used. So if it's not being used, I don't have that extra,
Correct.
okay. And this is monthly, so it's actually on my bill 26, or is that $13?
That's bi-monthly, the 13.
It's bi-monthly,
So
okay.
$6.50
That
a
was
month.
one of the things that, so then I'm confused then, if you look on page 10, what are these numbers? I'm confused, what these particular numbers, where did those come from? I don't see those numbers coming from
Yeah.
what I was just looking at.
No, good question. Your rates are typically bi-monthly, the way you have your rate schedules and stuff, so we want to keep the rates consistent with that, but as terms of, understanding what's the impact, I mean, I always find it's easier to understand, hey, what's the monthly impact of paying this, as opposed to a bi-monthly impact? So that chart on the right shows the impact on a monthly basis. For example, the low-use customer who would be using 3 units of water in a bi-monthly billing period would pay,
Alternative B.
let's say alternative B. They'd pay $6.50, half of the 13, so that's
Okay.
$6.50, plus $1.50.
Times 3, right?
Times 4.
Times 3.
Well,
it
times
is.
3 if you're using.
Right.
Times 3.
I'm looking at page 10 or 13, 13 in the middle of the page. Yeah. See what I'm-
Can we get a board consensus that alternate B is the one that we're preferring? I mean, I think from what I've heard, that's what people are thinking is let's do that. Let's see if alternate B is the one we should be focusing on. Can I get a
moved.
consensus on that?
That's
Do
the
we
one
have a
I'm most
consensus?
concerned with. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the one we should focus on for today.
I don't have a problem with that.
I would agree.
Okay,
Okay.
so alternate B, when we go to different pages, et cetera, I think that's what we need to address. I think he's
Okay.
doing a little math here to see if in fact that is in fact a monthly issue, but, yeah, so bi-monthly, we're talking about $13 plus
Plus water usage.
water usage at $1.50 more.
Not necessarily. If you were using 8 units, you would be an additional $18. The way I would figure it is that the first 4 units are $6 because of $1.50. And then the next 4 units would be $3, so
apiece.
that's 12. So you'd be using 18 and plus 13 would be 31 per month. Not while it's not running.
But divided by 2. Divided by 2, because you're using 8 units for a 2-month period, and that bi-monthly period of $13
Oh,
is.
okay, wait a minute, so let's back up, this 13 is, fixed for bi-monthly, okay. I thought you said that was monthly.
And then you use 8 units, yeah, you're talking about,
So you're talking about 15,
15.50, or half of 31.
for 8 units monthly.
8 bi-month,
8 bi-monthly or 4 monthly.
4 monthly.
Something's weird.
Tell me what, oh, that's the cost recovery.
Capital cost, and then you have,
I guess that's why, I think why we're referring to different pages here. Tell me what 8 units
Oh, someone using
would cost,
8 units in a bi-monthly billing
or
period.
bi-monthly billing.
They would pay the $13 fixed charge,
Okay,
plus they have to pay for 8 units, and we'll use alternative B. So the first 4 units would be $1.50 each, times 4 would be $6, plus an additional 4 in tier 2, which is $3 a unit, so 3 times 4 is 12. The bi-monthly bill would be 13 plus 6 plus 12 is 31. On a monthly basis, it would equal $15.50. So that's half of it.
okay, but bi-monthly is $31, but no one out there is paying $31 for 8 units. They're paying more because they also have the sewer
well, yeah,
charges,
yeah,
et cetera.
Is
Is this
Right, this
only an
is-
yeah.
increase?
This is the increase for the emergency water supply surcharge
Increase.
only. Increase, yeah.
Increase.
No one's paying anything yet for emergency water supply.
Okay.
Over and above their regular bill.
Okay.
Correct.
So that is what someone is going to look
Okay,
at.
so if I'm currently paying 30 some odd dollars for 8 units, then I would be paying an additional $31, or, that's where we get more over to this page 14, where it's like $36.50 monthly. Because it seems to me that's taking into account the monthly bill plus the emergency water service capital costs surcharge. So
Now
if
I'm
you
getting
go to
confused, I'm
page
sorry.
14 and you look at medium use, well, actually that's 6 units, of $36.50 on unit B, on alternate B. That's $36.50 a month, or $73, as compared to the current use of, which is around $30.
I'm going to apologize because what we did in this water rate study, we assumed initially when we were going through, we ran numbers for the 2 things. One is raising the rates to
Right.
financial stability and capital needs. And on the other side was the emergency water supply, which is the table that Director Rice was referring to.
Right.
On that subsequent page, it shows like the combined impacts of hypothetical water rate increases and emergency water supply increases. So I wanted to put them both in there. Hey, what's the impact if we do everything? But there's no action or anything at this stage being talked about with your regular water rates. So this table may be a little misleading at this stage of the game.
Which table you're saying is
The one you were
misleading?
talking
The
about.
next one.
So-
Total combined rates, that,
14.
14, on 14?
Oh, can we get the presentation back on the, on the thing? Thank you. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I don't care about 17, 14,
he's saying
I'm,
that this one, he's saying this one that you were talking about also includes a regular rate increase, not
Here.
only just that.
These are the impacts of the emergency water supply only on top of the regular water and sewer rates everyone pays. We don't currently have a chart that shows what the current bills are, and then add on top of it the additional whatever it needs to be, but we will come back with that, because that sounds like it's something that the board would like to see. Yeah.
okay, so you're looking at page
10 in the lower right.
10 at the lower right.
Yeah.
So now when we talk about medium use of, say, 6 units, you're saying it's an additional $12.50 a month, or 25 bucks.
That is correct. For the
Excuse me,
emergency water
20
supply to fund the capital
For,
costs of
for the
facilities.
emergency water supply only,
Correct,
not what rates we're paying today.
exactly.
Okay. I don't want to talk about the future rate aspect. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about people saying, what is it going to cost me based on my current rates plus the emergency water supply system? So I could say, if I use 6 units this time, which I did, and I wish I had my bill, but it was $32 or something like that. So I could say 32 plus 25 is what it would cost me. During the months it's not running.
That's
it's just,
correct.
Just,
On a bi-monthly basis, just to
On a
fund the
bi-monthly
facility.
basis.
That's right.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know. That's the kind of number I, you know. Yeah, and I know that, but at the same time, you're talking, if you're talking about two steps here and then you're blending back in,
Oh, good.
I
Yeah.
don't want to,
Yeah, no, we weren't, there's a million ways to show it, whether it's just this rate, or this rate and the other rate, or this rate and the other rate and the hypothetical future rate. So this table just breaks it out only, and you're exactly right, what you just said there. The current bi-monthly bill, as Monique has calculated, is the $23.82 fixed charge. It works out to be about $36 for someone using 6 units of water. Oh, 8 units bi-monthly.
8 units.
It's about $36 for
Okay.
your regular water rate. And on top of that, you'd pay an additional, if you're using 8 units, it'd be an additional $15.50 times 2 is 31. So their bill would go from $36 to $67
Okay.
Okay.
for 8 units. And that's,
Because before, when I was looking
Two-thirds
at
of your
this,
customers
when I
are
was
local.
looking at this
Yeah.
other one, there was considerable higher rate increases than what we're
And just
talking
for,
about
and just
today.
for clarification, that's assuming it's $8.8 million plus 20%, so you're really borrowing $11 million, not getting any kind of
Money.
grants or anything. So
correct.
we are presenting, as the law tells us to, is to give the worst-case scenario.
Yeah.
I think it should be the real scenario. The worst-case scenario is the real scenario. But in the long term, over the years, it's likely that we will either be able to reduce the rates or adjust them even before they occur, if for some reason we get funding and others, or if the plant comes in at 7, like we're thinking, or like could be.
Correct.
So it's almost half the cost, yes. Ms. Robinette?
Thank you. Well, again, I would like to let you know how much I appreciate the work you've done in the short amount of time that you've had. And I also appreciate the questions from everyone that's here today. You have raised, again, I think, excellent questions. Our decision to focus on this rate increase, looking at the brackish water desal, is one that we have made, hopefully to make it as clear as can be, just to look at that for the moment. And I appreciate that you've really done a very comprehensive study of all the rates on the regular water rates and the wastewater. But if we're focusing right now on the brackish water, when we leave here today, I think it will be really helpful for our community to make sure that we give some really good, solid, but pretty, I don't want to say simple, but clarity so that they can see, for instance, the comparative statements. Right now, this is what a person using 4 units is paying for their rates, for their service. And when we add this additional, if you stayed at 4 units, this would be what your additional charges would be. You know, like 2 or 3 really clear examples, example A, example B, just so people say, oh, okay, I understand.
Okay, so if we've agreed, I'm just looking for a consensus from the board, if we've agreed that we're going to use option B as the way we want to do it, we have 3 tiers, we have a fixed rate of 35%, we have an operating rate at 65%. No, we're saying we have 3 tiers. Sure, we'll entertain a question, sure.
You're at the board, I'm not even
Yeah.
supposed to be talking, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, go ahead. We're working on this.
Is there gonna be any exception for family, or is it just based on use?
Tiers on use, that's what, yeah.
There's
I'll
a
accept-
lot of communities that have exceptions for families with similar rate structures. So that I hope, we're not voting yet, but we really should look at that.
Well, it's based on the amount of use, yeah. If you have 100
There's a lot
people,
of
you're still
families
using a lot.
that work for not a lot of money in this community and that are large families and barely can scrape by, and we're talking about charging them 3 times what somebody just because they have kids. I think that needs to be looked at, and like I said, I've done a lot of study of a lot of rates out there. There's exceptions in large cities that, you know, that have a very similar thing. I get the simplicity of this, but, you know, there's some exceptions made and you know, that can address those issues. And it's done, it's practiced a lot of times. Also for large water users, I think, you know, I will want to get involved with this and be talking to everybody, you know, before
Right.
this. But
Right.
I think that's a mistake that, you know, I don't think it's fair. You know, not just for my own self, you know, because I got a family as well, but like those people that, I mean, this is going to be considerable.
Right.
So.
Do you have any comments on that? Yeah, I'll take a comment from anybody. If not,
We do have a low-income program in the wastewater rates.
yeah. Maybe we can fold that in to a rate study. It's not, well, it's skewed. It is skewed for the higher tiers, isn't it? So a large family would be facing a higher rate if we chose
You're
Schedule B.
correct. People who use more are going to pay more, kind of like your current rate structure with the tiers that are there. And the gentleman is correct. If someone has a very large family, odds are they're going to be using more water and not purchasing all their water in the first tier or the second tier. By the same token, those tiers are kind of reduced tiers for the lowest levels of use. So if someone's using 1 unit, they're getting the benefit of 1 unit of that tier. If they do use, you know, 4 units, they're kind of getting a break at those lowest levels.
But your uniform one that we have on page 12, the center, was $2.95. And here, somebody can use up to 16 units, and they're only paying $3 a unit, and even less for the ones prior to that. So only the people that are over 16 units are going to be starting to suffer a little bit. And in fact, they won't suffer a little bit for a while, because their first 4 units, they aren't going to suffer until 20. And when they're at 20, now they'll even out at essentially the uniform rate, which was $2.95.
You're making a good observation, and it's, yeah. There's no such thing as fairness when it comes to rates, no matter from what perspective.
Right.
Whatever you do, someone can look at it from a different perspective and say, hey, we're not being treated fairly. But that is something that does come up, that what the gentleman noted, for large families with tiered rates, they often end up having to purchase, they're not getting the benefit of being able to get all their water in the lowest tier.
Right. But I found that in general, 20 units, when I've talked to my contemporaries and what I use and everything else, our authority is really for water wasting, and the waste of water is generally outdoor watering. So a large family can mitigate their use. 20 units would have to be a pretty darn big family, frankly. There's a lot of water. So, but point well taken. And when if we need to address our regular rate structure, I think that would be an appropriate time to come up with that. I'm trying to focus on something that we can look at by Tuesday. Ms. Robinette?
Yes, and I do appreciate that brought up, that we do want to always be very sensitive to all of our community members. And so I would say even right now, and you may know this, Monique, when we're talking about the third tier, 16 units and more, do you have a notion, sort of an out of our, I'm talking residential right now, about 3,700 residential. How many actually go into that higher tier?
I think Alex has it in his charts.
I think it's,
Yes,
at
I'm
one point it
taking a
says
look.
90% are at 15 or
Well,
lower.
I'm still mystified by which page we're on, but not to worry.
Now take a look at, we have a distribution of residential bills. We broke out the residences separately. the bottom right, it's almost at the very end of this packet of stuff we provided, at the very bottom right-hand corner, it's page 50. And I want to point out, this is based on last year's water use. It's a chart with a green bar chart on it.
Green.
And you can see on that green bar chart what the distribution of single-family residential bills was in 2012-13, which is before everyone cut back drastically on their water use. So this was like a typical normal year distribution pattern.
Okay, and on that page, I do appreciate the page reference. When we are looking at the x-axis or going across the bottom, what those numbers, I don't see necessarily a legend. Those numbers are, I imagine then, units?
Yeah, that's the bi-monthly water use, I should put here.
Okay,
I'm
the
sorry, it says
bi-monthly
monthly,
water
but it should
usage.
say bi-monthly.
Oh,
So that's what your
okay,
billing
all
period
right.
is,
So
yeah.
we do see, even
Bi-monthly.
glancing at that 16 units, then we're down to just over about less than 2% use 16 units or more? 13, okay, let me get back to 13.
They give
Well,
a
we have some summaries
cumulative
that
summary
Director
there
Clift
on,
is referring to.
on page. So they're saying 90% used less than 16.
Okay, yeah, that's a reverse way of saying it. So
So
we're not talking about a large number of people, but still, and Monique, you're saying that we do have, of course, options for people, as a large family that need a reduced rate, they could then make that application. Okay, all right, that's fine. One other question,
No, we don't.
It's for wastewater.
It's only for wastewater.
that's just for wastewater. Okay, well, we may
Not
want to...
something that we couldn't implement later in this year when we do our alternate, our regular rate structure. We probably could have something in there for that. What I'm trying to do is focus a little bit on getting something that can be gotten back to us very quickly. And maybe I'll talk out of line in a way, but if we focus on B, on the B option, all we have to do is accept this particular report, approve the language of the actual notice, and we could do that. I'm proposing we have another meeting to approve the language on that notice. That's 3B. We should look at it, talk about it a little bit, send it to the rate study ad hoc committee, and for our approval so that the notice can go out expeditiously after that. So I'm hoping that we can have a board meeting to make that happen if we focus on exactly what the words should mean based upon option B. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. I just want to make a quick point that there is no legal requirement from my understanding from working with 100+ agencies. You don't have to formally approve the notice. A lot of agencies just mail it out, so it doesn't have to be a formal board action to approve every word that's in that notice.
Of course.
However, it is good to have input and get the board comfortable with what's in the notice. Yeah.
Right. So is the board ready to move on, accept this report and move on to B? And if we move on to special business 3B, we're going to be looking at the notice itself. In the notice, do you have to show examples of what it would mean to me? You don't.
Legally, what the notice requires you to do is state the date, time, and place of a public hearing, and what the proposed charges are that would be levied on the folks who are affected to pay the bills.
And the proposed charges would be so much fixed, or how would the proposed?
That's exactly right, yeah.
Do we
You
need,
could go above and beyond that and include additional information at your discretion. Yeah.
do we need to accept this report and indicate that alternate B is our recommended?
That would be good, I believe, to get direction that alternative B is the preferred.
Because in
approach.
your notice, you're kind of indicating board action. What was the rates to be inserted based on a rate study and board action? So it would seem to me back here, we ought to say, we approve this rate study and accept the rate study and recommend, alternate B.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that.
Sorry, I have another question. Go ahead and make your question.
I could go ahead and make that as a motion, but I think we need to officially say something rather than just.
And I would second that.
Can we clarify the motion?
Yeah, please.
Suggesting that you accept the water rate study as presented by Bartle and Wells and direct staff to prepare a public notice based upon alternative B.
I love that.
But for the emergency supply,
Well
right?
said.
Well, yeah.
For the only for the.
I second.
This includes also the emergencies, this whole report does include the regular rates part though, right? I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're going forward with. Are we going forward with the entire or
No,
only?
just for
Okay, I just
just
want
for
to
the
make sure it's
emergency rates.
clear. Because those other rates are included in this report also,
How
right?
about
I
alternative
would
B as represented
On
on,
page 13 or page whatever that is.
Whatever
Right.
page.
Okay, all in favor?
Wait, I got a couple questions,
minute.
please. I'm sorry.
Discussion?
I'm sorry.
as represented on the page table labeled projected monthly emergency water supply surcharge impacts. Right?
And what page is that?
No, operating cost recovery. That's, you like this one?
This is the whole table.
This is the whole table. Okay,
There's a
so we're
table that's
looking at,
titled Emergency Water
yeah,
Supply Surcharges.
So we're looking
Yeah.
at lower right, page 10.
page 9.
Page 9.
Page 9
Yeah.
is the one that Alex is directing us to. So it's, the table itself is labeled emergency water supply surcharges.
That's the table. This just happens to be a representation of the
Right.
number.
Right.
The next one, so.
Okay.
Page 9 on the lower right.
Right, and that's all we're addressing.
Yes. Now, I think we have some input possibly from,
I also have a couple questions.
could you hold this just for 1 second? This man's been, real quick. And your name, please, sir?
My name is Paul Schmidt from Cambria, and I have a question for your consultant. Have you ever had a board come to you to put together a package to reduce rates for water? That's my question.
I have worked with some agencies that wanted to look at reducing rates because they had a large debt issue that was expiring, freeing up stuff. But typically, they wouldn't need us if they wanted to cut the rates back. Normally, we're hired if someone's got financial challenges and they need to increase the revenues to fund new projects or whatever. I've worked with other agencies that have done what this board is suggesting, gone out with a Prop 218 notice that shows a maximum charge and adopt something lower, or even adopt it for the time being, and if they get grant funding a year later, then they would reduce their rates. Yeah, there's certainly agencies that do that.
Okay,
Rarely would I get
before
hired
we
to cut
take
someone rates.
those two, Director Rice, are you finished? If,
No, I'm sorry, I have a couple of
and then we'll go to Thompson, and then we'll go.
I just wanted to respond to the gentleman's question there. Sir, I think that part of, excuse me, the intent here is that this rate increase would be used specifically for the emergency water supply. To the extent that the grant fund, the grant project that we have applied for is funded, we would most definitely reduce this amount of assessment because and I think that even in our rate notice, we need to very clearly point out the fact that we have applied for $3.5 million to fund this particular project. And whether we get the $3.5 million, I don't know, but I think we're in very good shape to get something. And if we get that something, then most definitely we will come back and make an adjustment to this proposed rate increase.
Or we might add, if in the event that the cost is more toward the 6 million, which is right now what we're thinking, maybe as high as 8.8 with a 20%. So this is representing $11 million worth of funding, which may be just a little more than half of that. So, but this is meant to be going out as the worst case scenario, and I think it's the right position to put out there is a not to exceed almost, certainly as far as this rate goes, it's not to exceed. Ms. Rice?
Couple of clarification questions. First, on page 9, your page 9, our page 12, emergency water supply surcharges, the $13 plus the alternative B per unit charge, That's every month, whether it's operating or not, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the amount per unit? Because this isn't all there is, there's also the per unit when it's actually operating, which may not be till October or later, but,
Correct, and that would be just to the right of that, there's that second column.
so
It's very
because the
yeah.
numbers are same.
It's very similar, which made it
gotcha.
confusing, but
That
that's
was
just
what was
mathematically where it turned out.
That's what I was confused
Yeah.
about. Okay, so if we put a plus sign in between those two columns, that's those plus that.
Yep.
So if I'm using, so during the time it's happening, it's being used, if I'm using 1 unit, I pay $1.50 plus $1.50. When it's not being used, I pay $1.50. Got it. Wow, that's, okay, on the 380,000 estimate for operating on, does that include the required staffing that we will need to have?
No, it does not. I'm assuming that we can, through automation, use the existing staff. And I know that CDM has commented on that and said, well, you need to hire 2 people. And I'd like to be able to see through our existing staff and automation if we could use that. And I have not incorporated 2 additional staff members into the budget, so no, it does not.
I will add, though, my understanding was it included some funding for staffing.
A small portion, but not 2 fully burdened additional water operators.
Not 2 full year-round employees.
So how are we going to actually, I mean, my understanding, this is a pretty complex project. I'm not saying that people on staff here couldn't be trained to run it at all, because I have high confidence in our staffing. I've talked to them. I know they know what they're doing with their current equipment. But it concerns me that we're not even really considering that we might need an extra person for this fairly large new piece of our infrastructure to make sure it's running. So we've got a contingency of 20% on the capital costs. It just kind of concerns me that we might be putting ourselves further in a hole if we're not incorporating. I mean, believe me, I don't want to increase the amount of money that this thing costs, but we need to make sure that we're including everything that it is actually going to cost, or we're going to end up in this situation again a year or 2 down the road where we're going to be running in the red because it actually turned out that we do need somebody that's even for 6 months, that's a full-time person 6 months of the year, which I don't know how you're going to find somebody that's for that position. But
it requires a T3 to run it. And for an example, if we're running this, we're not going to be running our other facilities, and through automation. If you think about the SR4 well, prior to automating that well, it was requiring about 12 to 14 hours a week just to have somebody go in over there and turning it off and turning it on. And yes, I can appreciate what you're saying regarding the operation of that facility, but it's not like we're going to be running all the facilities in tandem at once. We're not going to be running this and then the SR4 and then the SR1 and the SR3 and the San Simeon wells. We'll have a fairly diversified water portfolio that will allow us to be able to run them independently of each other. And so when you look at task order 4, there's a component in there that says there's an automation component, but you're obviously going to want to have somebody, but I would, instead of just fully burdening the budget right now, which is going to be tight, I would say let's get a little farther down the path and address it at that time. And again, it's an operational thing. Let me make the operational.
I'm good with you making the operational. I need to make sure that we're collecting enough revenue so that when we set the budget and approve a budget that you bring to us, that we are covering the costs that we need to be covering. Because if we're gonna let it slosh over into the other operating budget in a way that's not super clear, then I'm not sure that we do have the right number here. And I don't want to tell you how to run it. That's not my point. My point is, let's make sure that what we're doing, if CDM Smith is saying 2 full staff people, and you're saying, no, I think we can do it with just part-time of one of our guys, I mean, that's a pretty big gap between those two options, and if it can be done, then yay. I'm all for that, if we can reduce staffing. I know that this is not, the board doesn't decide that, except we do on the budget.
Yeah.
And except that we do on the rates and what we're going to be asking our neighbors and friends to be paying for. I don't want to be going forward with a rate study and then have the other rate study happen, and then it turns out that we actually do need somebody full-time because we're going to do, it's just, that's why I had the question, and I think that it's concerns me. That's
And
all.
I don't think CDM is intimately involved enough with the daily operations of the system to make that. I mean, that's a pretty general assumption. I'm not disputing what they're stating, but I think that's kind of a blanket statement under you're going to need 2 people to run it, that type of thing, and
Right,
and so there's going to be times, and staffing, you bring up a good point. Staffing on an operation like this, you have to be fluid. You have to be able to staff it when it's running and staff it when it's not running. So, but I understand what you're saying. I would let's get a little farther down the road. But I can appreciate. But I just would be reluctant to fully front load this thing with 2 full-time staff at this point, because you're looking at another,
Yeah.
$250,000 a year.
Yeah, I agree, and we as a board should not necessarily be having anything to do with operations or speaking with our people, but anecdotally, I'm certain that the operators would be anxious to be cross-trained in this type of equipment. I think it's a way you could recruit people, and I think the staff we have, CDM Smith is saying you need 2 people. Well, operations might say we have 2 people. The reason you need 2 people is because one person needs to sleep or whatever. So they're not saying 2 additional staff. It's going to take dedicated staff, and I think that the general manager should be free to staff as he feels fit. And it seemed he just addressed the fact that he does have staff to be able to handle it, and throwing it in is just maybe adding more, piling on in a way. I do have some members of the custom.
Just finish with that conversation.
Please do.
Because then they should have their turn. No, I was just going to say to that I do appreciate what you shared, General Manager Gruber. I think it's always good to raise the questions, but I think what you shared was a very important point, and that is that it would be people that are probably currently on staff that would get certified and would know, that would be a new skill set for them. But I thought you made a very important point, and that is that when they're needed there, that one person or those 2 people would most likely, their greatest need to spend time there will be in those cases when we're running it full-time. And when we're not running it full-time and we're not in a serious situation, then they would be more just monitoring the maintenance type mode.
And I think ultimately, and I've always said this, is we really need to push towards dual certification of our operators. It really makes absolutely no sense to have a small district like this and have a pool of people over here and a pool of people over there. If you look at smaller utilities throughout California, and you motivate them to do that, you give them a stipend or some kind, but to have them, so then, when you have a water and a wastewater operators with dual certified people, you have 8 people that are being able to mobilize depending on what the needs are. And so that just makes a lot more sense for the district instead of having, and we're working towards that, but we also need to incentivize our employees to be able to give them some kind of incentive to be able to do that. But a small district like this, we really need to have everybody dual certified.
Yeah, I think cross-training is invaluable.
So we have some members of the public that wanted to comment or ask questions. Please, Ms. Dean.
Karen Dean, Cambria. You're only charging operating and maintenance costs during the time period that it's operating, and isn't there maintenance all year round on this?
Yes,
is that included into the other part of the fee, or?
I saw $50,000, but maybe you might comment.
I think there's a little, we're not sure about how much staffing's included in that number, because I was under the impression that there was some staffing costs included in there. Maybe it's not the full amount, assuming you're going to have these people on board, all new people for a full year at a time. But yeah, there are some costs for just maintaining this facility throughout the year. As a preliminary estimate, we put in $50,000, and that's on top of, that'll be recovered with the ongoing fixed costs for the capital costs. So there'd be hopefully a small revenue stream coming in each year when you're collecting the capital cost to enable you to maintain that facility during periods of non-use, when it's mothballed, but still has to be set up appropriately to do that.
So our operating and maintenance cost really is operating costs, because the maintenance goes all year round, and you've got it included in the other part.
Well, there's a minimal amount of maintenance costs that has to go year-round, but what you call operating costs, sure, that's a good way of thinking about it.
Okay.
But there are some more maintenance costs when you're probably running the facility and things like that, I would
And
assume.
if I could comment just really quickly, sorry about that. When you're running this, you're not running something else. So you're saving money in pumping, treating, distributing, collecting, treating again at the wastewater plant, and disposing. There's 6 components of it. So there is a cost savings on the other operational parameters of the district as it relates to water and wastewater. So this is to augment our water supply under emergency conditions. And although it's probably the most expensive component of our water source, the other ones will be resting, if you will, which will represent cost savings there also.
Okay.
Ms. Bentonhausen?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Elizabeth Bettenhausen of Cambria. I want to thank Director Rice for raising a very, very important question, because one of the things we're trying to deal with is the fact that banks don't like us at the moment for overspending. And if we don't take account of every possible expense in this emergency project, we are going to be in super trouble down the road. I disagree passionately on the vision that you've received so far today of the maintenance of this project. It's not a desal project. I want to acknowledge that completely, but it is a reverse osmosis project. And the maintenance of reverse osmosis projects, when they are not being operated, is very costly. You can go down and talk to Morro Bay, you can go down and talk to Santa Barbara and others, but they ran into a huge expense when they didn't run that system 100% of the time. I do not believe, and pardon me, General Manager, because I am too ignorant of your expertise, I do not believe it's possible, no, I do not believe it would be wise to turn off all the other systems, because then you would have to look at the maintenance of the water project on Santa Rosa Creek if it's been sitting there, say, 6 months without operating. You would have to look at where you're going to get the huge component of the project, the fresh water on San Simeon, if you aren't that doesn't make sense. I think you need to put in much more than $50,000 a year on maintenance if you are going to cover this project, because whether or not it is running 1 month or even maybe 11 months, you don't know that yet, we are going to have to spend money on maintenance. I thoroughly believe that having certified people on the water staff is at level 3 excellent. I don't think you should try to give people a prod from wastewater to get their certification on water, because we don't have enough people in wastewater that are certified yet there. This is a huge issue about how you are providing us services. And please don't let us think that we can pay 13 instead of 16, when 16 would cover actual immediate costs. I'm talking about dollars, $13 instead of $16, when the 16 would cover the actual immediate expenses of running a high-tech operation. And if you've got an automobile and you no longer can repair it in your garage, you know how much maintenance it costs to operate your digital car these days. So I passionately disagree on the idea that somehow we can, with current staff, operate this and maintain it with very little expenditures, maybe $50,000 a year. I think that is stunningly naive. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKinnon.
Thank you for the opportunity. Jerry McKinnon again, and I'm back to the budget page. 17 or 14? From the last scheduled CCSD meeting, I was under the impression that this next month, we're going to be presented with a preliminary budget from each department. Does this page reflect what we're going to see next month as a preliminary budget for the water department? Somebody put this budget together. Was it the staff of the CCSD that developed this budget?
The answer is no, this is not a budget. This is just a financial projection we were used to try and estimate what you needed to do with your regular water rates to get them up.
I see. Well, then
So
I
it's
think...
based on last year's
Okay,
financial
then
information.
I think what we're looking at here is just a kind of a pipe dream out there. But on the other hand, there are some good points in here. When you look down at the expenses under emergency supply operations, there's a total of next year $2,405,000 to take care of the total maintenance of the system, and $220,000 of that will be for the, $270,000 of that will be for the emergency supply system. $50,000 will be for the ongoing maintenance, and $220,000 whenever it's operating. Now that's built on whatever source of information you have that we would conclude is accurate information. So in this budget, it indicates that we have set aside money for it. Now, when I look at the top part for our income, I see that there's going to be a 4% cost of living or escalation every year built into the program. Now, that's healthy. That's a good idea. So when I think of your wanting to pass what it is that you have for a motion, but based on this, I think we should wait until next month to see what the district comes up with as a budget to pay for all of this. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. And Tony?
Just a very quick question. I'm very concerned about the overall cost of this. At $8.8 million, I haven't seen any figures on it. I'm afraid I haven't done my research. I'm worried that it will go over that. I want to know if there's a warranty on this equipment. I want to know what would happen if there was a catastrophic failure of the equipment. It's high-tech, so it's quite possible. Are we taking out insurance on this, on the equipment, and therefore what sort of cost is that going to incur on the district? I'm very worried about the total expense of this project, and I never hear questions about all these supplemental things, and I hope they're all being considered. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, sir.
Paul Schmidt,
Paul Schmidt.
full-time Cambrian resident. And my question is, this emergency permits that we got to put this in, I know I'm assuming that's to start it up the first time. Now, once we shut it off, if it's been started up, is there another financial burden after that to start it up again to get the non-emergency permits, et cetera?
Interesting point. I do know that by the permit itself has a group of restrictions on it. It can only be used to serve current customers and other things like that. We must, within 20 days of getting the permit, which is coming up, apply for a standard permit through the coastal development permit and all the other permits. The permits. So in that case, yeah, we're going to be going through standard processes. The emergency permits just got us off the ground, and we're confident. Well, we want to make sure that the permits we have would allow us to restart without going through a re-permitting process. Is that an accurate statement? Okay. So the direction to move from here.
I'm sorry, I have one other question.
Sure, go for it.
And it's based on the 3 tier levels. How did you determine that the second tier would go from 5 to 16 and then above 16 was going to be the highest tier?
Yeah, with tiers, there's no single right or wrong way of doing it. You could come up with any numbers. Yeah, I looked at the water use, and I'm forgetting off the top of my head, you want to make sure the tiers are capturing a reasonable amount of water use, so it's not each tier is capturing 2% of the water. So we kind of looked at the water use and figured out what might make sense in terms of where the bills are and what the water usage patterns are in the big picture. So it's, yeah, it's one of many options, but it's something that logically seemed to make sense, where you get, it's like 30 or 40% of water in each of the tiers overall, and mathematically the numbers worked out that way. But we did look at other options as well. What if it was, 1 to 6, 6 to 20, things like that, and it changes. I mean, obviously all the rates and stuff change, but so there's no perfect answer for it, but I'll say in the big picture, the evaluation of the water use.
So it mathematically makes sense. Is that your answer, based on water use and the number of people in each of those particular tiers? This is where it made the most sense? Is that
Yeah.
what you're telling me?
And yeah.
Which is fine. I just need to know how you decided that.
Yeah, the percentage of use in each tier, was, the first tier is about 32%, next tier 38, next tier 30. So these were kind of big blocks of water that applied to each a significant chunk of water use. So it seemed to make sense that these were reasonable breakpoints. Could someone have used slightly different numbers for reasonable breakpoints too? Of course. But this is what we came up with as what.
May I suggest that we accept the report and we now focus on the item 3B? Or do we have a motion? What's the motion? Oh, yeah, I remember that motion.
Yes, we had one.
All in favor? Does anybody know what the motion is? Do you recall?
Reread it.
If you could read that, Monique, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. To accept the water rate study and direct staff to prepare a notice based upon alternative B as represented on the table, labeled emergency water supply surcharge, page 12.
I just want to make one comment before we vote.
Please do.
I appreciate that we are on a tight schedule here, and I really appreciate the turnaround time of the consultant and of Tracy and Jerry working on this so hard to get it turned around so fast and turn around to get the notice out fast, because we do need to move forward as quickly as possible. I'm not super comfortable with it, but I'm going to vote for it because I think that it's because we are time constrained, and hopefully we will not run out of water, and we need to make sure we have something online as quickly as possible. I really would have liked to have a little more time to just kind of absorb this, like even an extra day would be nice, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that I'm reluctantly going to support this going forward, because we need to. I'm not reluctant to have it go forward. I'm reluctant to do it so quickly. I want to make sure that's clear.
My understanding also is that what we're putting out here is the maximum possible.
Right, so maybe-
We will have some time to study and see we'll have some more harder numbers and maybe have some indication even of grant money
Right.
by the time we actually have to set a rate. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, so even
Thank you.
if we have a maximum, when we have the hearing, and we've confirmed the fact that we have some, we could adopt a rate lower,
Right.
even on the hearing date, if we wanted to, based upon more recent information.
You certainly could.
So, okay, good. That known, and that's good.
Thank you.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's, I don't know if anybody has comments on the actual 9B. I do have a couple, but does anybody have comments on 3B?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir. Mr. Thompson?
Basically, my comment has to do with the notice, or the draft notice that's provided under 3B, and it starts on page 60 of the packet. My comment has to do with the fact that I think that we should greatly enhance the section that talks about the possibility of our receiving additional funds and the fact that the rates would be reduced proportionately. And I think that's the second paragraph on page 61. Perhaps talk about the a little bit of information about the grant itself, and so that information is included in the notice. So it's you know, highlighted and clearly understood that this is something that that we have a good chance of succeeding, and we would certainly, you know, our commitment is to make sure we would reduce proportionately as stated here.
Yes, I appreciate that, and let me also point out that I agree with Director Rice that we haven't even read this stuff yet, but apparently the suggestion was we just have staff prepare a notice and send it. We could make that decision today. I would prefer that we would get together for a very small, brief special board meeting. Hopefully it wouldn't last very long at all, so that we can all go over the prepared notice between now and Tuesday. Perhaps we'll be able to read it. Perhaps the general manager could send different versions of it, because and Tuesday would be a good time. Then we can print it and get it out before next Friday, which is the goal of staff. And yeah, and I agree with enhancing it or making it sure. I almost wanted to change it that the water rates may be reduced proportionally, but maybe we should leave it as the water rates will be reduced proportionally, and kind of give an idea of what that proportionality might be. I also think it's only fair, sure, we're sending out a notice. I have a personal preference that would compare what just one, not a whole tier, just one user, one typical user's bill looks like now and what it would look like afterwards. I think that's it's appropriate. It's just. It's the thing to do. It highlights the real difference rather than saying, oh, your bill's going to go up $10. I think it's important. And also, I think we should talk about the last sentence, second last sentence. It says the project also includes habitat mitigation measure that will produce, it says, a small amount of water. Actually, it's a significant amount of water to protect the riparian and aquatic habitat on San Simeon Creek. We tend to minimize that when, in fact, it's 100 gallons a minute, I think, that we're putting into that lagoon. So the reason it's so darn expensive is because I think we're doing the right thing.
Can I make a suggestion,
yes, please.
President Berenger? And we've talked about this with staff. So there's the legal requirements of the notice, which I think we captured. And then what I'm hearing from the board is there are additional things that you think are important, and we absolutely agree with you. What we were thinking about doing is, in addition to the public notice, is having working at staff level and working with our PIO, is just a 1 or 2 page fact sheet. So you would have the language, but you would address, for an example, the question that Director Thompson suggested, some of the things that you're even suggesting, and have it not as, because you just have to be careful, because this could easily become a very, very lengthy document. However, it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, appropriate to provide additional information in that mail out. Is that?
I agree, it's a great idea. Yeah, I've seen other agencies do that as well.
Okay. And you might point out, or there's a Q&A portion of the website that I noticed that we have up, and it's pretty good. You know, I have a question and you have an answer. I'd like to see that be a dynamic process during this period. So if staff feels that there's a commonly asked question, a FAQ, so to speak, that we reply to it and encourage our constituents. Some may not be computer literate, but also get it out in other ways. So because, you know, there's a lot of questions that a single answer works well.
So what I'm hearing, so we have our marching orders is that we have a meeting hopefully before Tuesday or no later than Tuesday, and that we could, if that would be okay with the board, is to attach a one sheet, fact sheet, if you will, that would be helping our constituents identify maybe some of those questions that you're asking, but not necessarily incorporated into the ballot language, or in the rate increase proposal. And District Council did work on this, and yeah, so that's what I mean.
And if we can get,
I'm open for suggestions. This next couple days, today's Thursday, so we have Friday, we'll hear Friday, we're here whenever we need to be here, but we'll get it done. I just thought maybe we could, on Tuesday, give you something that you guys feel comfortable with.
right, and if we don't have to call a meeting without violating the Brown Act, but I think we do, but I think that the intent would be that, yes, we've all read it. If there's a minor change, one director might want to suggest over another, but we get the thing done on that day, and that's the objective. So if we can focus on Tuesday, if it's an actual meeting, I don't want to
We
spend
can't
a
do it
lot of
here.
staff time.
It's Election day, we couldn't do a meeting here.
Oh, it's election day.
Mhm.
Oh, boy. How about Monday?
I'm a little focused on it.
Can we do a telephone? Well,
No, no. Can we,
about when-
what if we, I know
Can we do a
everybody wants to
telecon-
have their input, well, what if we did a committee meeting, that could, you know, if we appointed committee, I don't know if people are comfortable with having two directors appointed to a committee to do it.
Who would you like,
I don't
Mr.
know.
Gruber? So why don't we, you know what?
If
we
the
could-
other
we-
directors are comfortable
I'm
with that, that
comfortable
would
with
solve
actually
that
applying.
problem.
We could approve the notice today and a Q&A to be reviewed by staff with two directors.
Right, and have the two directors, if they feel fit that any minor changes to the actual notice that's here be made, and we're notified of those, we're notified of those changes, and if, without objection, we'll let it go forward. If directors are notified of the changes and they have objection, we'll have a special meeting on Wednesday.
Right, because we can
Does that
call
work?
it special meeting with 24
Right
hours
away.
notice,
Okay,
right?
so,
Does
no
that work?
no meeting required. Here you go for it.
The only thing I'm going to say, you don't need to formally approve the notice.
Right.
Right now, this is a draft notice that I know still needs work, so I wouldn't approve this and say you're going to add something onto it.
Okay.
Yeah, but conceptually,
We'll have the rate committee, ad hoc committee, which is Director Thompson and Director Rice, confer with staff to make sure that the notice goes out.
Mhm.
We don't even have to see it.
I have a question on this. We had discussion at some point about making sure that this, without confusing people, that there is another rate increase coming probably right on the heels of this one, because we do need to get and I don't see that currently in this letter.
Correct.
So can we make sure, I don't know if it needs to be not incorporated in this specific part, or we need to, but I want to make sure we are absolutely clear. This is only for the emergency water supply. We do need a rate increase separate from the water supply, the emergency water supply that we're asking you to vote on this one.
Right.
So I didn't see that in this yet.
President Barrett, can we have like a minute at staff level just to maybe take a break or so, and so we can? 'Cause
Sure.
We're kind of at a critical point right now.
Okay,
We wanna
can we
make
make,
sure.
let's make it 5 minutes? Can you do it in 5 minutes? 10?
Okay, thank you for that.
What do you need, 10?
No, not 10, that's,
Okay.
I think we'll
5
lose-
minutes.
Okay.
At 10 to 3, we'll start again. We'll adjourn for a short meeting, recess. All right, we'll bring the meeting back to order. Got 1 minute? Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order.
So I think what we should
Mr.
do right
Gruber.
now is summarize what we believe what the motion was made. If you can take the, AGP, will you take the you've missed about the last 40 minutes or so of the meeting, so thank you. And just put the cameras back on so it can be on the board. And so we believe that we captured what the board was trying to say, and I would like Administrative Services Officer Monique Madrid to read it back to make sure that we have our marching orders, if you will.
Approve the notice today and include a fact sheet and assign the rate study ad hoc committee to approve the final notice.
What was that? I missed that. What?
Just add the word conceptually, if you would, or I can't make motions, but go ahead.
Okay.
I was,
Approve the notice today and include a fact sheet and assign rate study ad hoc committee to approve the final notice.
sure. That's, yeah. In other words, we aren't approving any kind of specific language. We want the ad hoc committee to approve, we approve it in concept, but we're having the ad hoc committee finalize any notice that goes out.
Do you want
I would appreciate beyond that, though, that prior to it going out, that all the board members get a chance to review it. And in the event a given board member has an objection, a serious objection.
Yeah, you're getting into a brown
Okay, we
act
can't.
situation there because
There you go.
you're doing a chain decision making, and
Okay.
I would say let's leave it to the ad hoc committee. Should they be unable to agree, then they notify the president. He can call a special meeting.
I like that solution.
So adjusted. You know, Mr. Brown, he's done a good job, but I tell you, sometimes he gets in the way of, I think he gets in the way of good governance.
Well, it's not the current governor that wrote
I know.
It's Ralph Brown,
You
not
can think all you
Jerry
want,
Brown.
but it
doesn't matter.
It's still the problem.
Okay, with that, we can move on to 3C.
Well, wait, we don't.
No,
Did we need to vote on it, or do we?
no.
we're just going-
Yes, if that's a formal
We
motion.
have to vote? Okay.
I don't remember the motion being made,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's fine.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Read it back again.
Approve the notice in concept today and include a fact sheet and assigned rate study ad hoc committee to approve the final notice. If the committee is unable to agree, they'll contact the president and he'll call a special meeting.
Good.
So
Excuse me, so we won't need that additional meeting if,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
If Mike and I can get along.
So I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Now we can move on to 3C.
Thank you, President Berenger and board members. Item 3C is a consideration of a resolution authorizing the board president to execute a letter to the San Luis Obispo County Board of Supervisors opposing hydraulic fracturing into the San Luis Obispo County. This item was based on the future agenda items that were brought to the staff's attention at the end of our last board meeting. And so we drafted a staff report, and we've also included a resolution. I want to thank Director Rice for sending her resolution. I worked with District Council on this, and it's really a hybrid of Director Rice's resolution that she sent and a resolution that the city of Arroyo Grande adopted. And so it's really a kind of a combination of them both, if you will. And with that being said, if there's anything that I can answer for the board, I'm not sure if there's, I don't know, I think President Berenger, you said that there was somebody that was going to show a brief slide or so, but we can answer any questions at this time if the board would like that.
Do any directors have questions with the, if not, I do have a request to speak from Jeff Walters. Jeff came up to me before the meeting and wanted to show a presentation. He guaranteed that it was going to be 3 minutes or less, but I'm granting him a couple of extra minutes if he were to show an opposing view.
And that's what I plan on doing. As far as the rest of it goes, the presentation right here is under 3 minutes. It's the presentation against fracking. The following two 30-second spots, so that should only account for a minute, are those from the industry itself in their response to fracking and what they're trying to do as far as, shall we say, education of the public, which would be their advertising campaign, essentially. So this first part, the Gasland one, which is, yeah, back over there. Yeah, that one. Expand that and then go ahead and set it to motion, and that'll get that going right there. So.
I'm sorry, it stopped
Oh, crap. Unable to connect to the internet. Darn it. Well, there you go. That's life for you in the big city. Okay. One
I'm
can hope.
going to pause this.
Thank you.
When that's that.
That'd be
But
great.
we
Thank
really
you.
want, we're going to stay within the 6 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm sure I will definitely stay within 6 minutes as long as we can get this up. While that's going on, I'm just going to say, basically, I'm, of course, in favor of the resolution as was stated, and adopting that and having it sent to the county seat for a ban on fracking in the county, and hopefully to concentrate on that in the state of California as a water concern. Thank you. So, for the most part, this is just basically to support the resolution to ban fracking and general information for the public as to why it is as dangerous as it is for the public interest. Sure. Oh, okay. Hang on.
If I might, folks can also get a fairly good unbiased picture of what fracking is and what the issues are for California if they go to the California Coastal Commission website. Their February 2014 meeting, they had a presentation given to them that was very good about what fracking is, what are the implications for the coastal region of California, and why this kind of thing would be is a threat to this area. So that, again, that's the California Coastal Commission February 2014 meeting. I believe it was on the first day of their meeting, but you should be able to find it pretty easily if you go. Probably even somebody's clipped it out of the Coastal Commission's video and put it on YouTube, I'm guessing. But they did get, because the Coastal Commission, they do have a slant toward protecting the coast, but they also really believe in getting all of the facts straight. And so their presentation that they had was actually, I attended that meeting, it was actually quite a clear and good understanding of what the impacts could be for our area. So while we're waiting for that to come up.
You had some concerns about, we might as well go ahead and deal with them.
Well, sure. Yeah, let's go along. Well, I kind of would like to, well, maybe I'll be convinced to change my mind. But I had, since it's coming out, I didn't see this until today. I'm definitely not wanting to take a position as a board member on an item that we really don't have much authority over. I mean, the county has authority over land use, and there isn't an immediate danger that I see. I might be convinced otherwise, but for us to, without testimony on any other side, adopt a countywide prohibition on fracking, I would like to change the words a little bit, just that says that we'd like to take a proactive approach in adopting a countywide prohibition on fracking until it determines that adequate protections of the health and quality of life of all our residents is assured. I don't want to take a black and white position without, without any other input from the community. No one, I can't take a position of our constituents in general without hearing from the constituents in general. So I just wanted to make sure that we're saying take adequate protection. Don't put permits out until they're convinced that the item is moot. So it was a small change, but one that I think is enlightened. We'll leave it at that.
I think it sounds prudent. The trouble is with the industry itself is it has proven time and time again historically to be, shall we say, deleterious to the common good and general health and welfare of humanity in general. Given the San Bruno incidents, the Deepwater Horizon event, in which 11 people were killed, and the company well knew about it beforehand. They have constantly said during both before and after each of these incidents that there was no problem and there was no error. I think the industry itself has proven itself to not be forthcoming with the public, to have enough money and resources to be able to either brainwash or convince the public otherwise. And part of my response in the video that comes after this one for the industry response is part of an example of that.
Yeah, please move forward.
Beyond that, we'll move forward and go ahead and run the tape.
Received a letter in the mail offering him $100,000 for permission to drill for natural gas on his land. He knew that in 2005, Congress had passed a bill exempting gas companies from environmental regulations. He wanted to know what impact the drilling would have on his land, so he took his camera across the United States to discover the truth about hydraulic fracturing.
The method of gas drilling they use is called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. It blasts a mix of water and chemicals 8,000 feet into the ground. The fracking itself is like a mini earthquake. The intense pressure breaks apart the rock and frees up the gas.
6 states have documented over 1,000 incidents of groundwater contamination.
It bubbles and hisses when it comes out. I won't drink it.
They can drill whether we like it or not.
It's a free-for-all. Our water was good before they started drilling, and when they got done, it was bad.
Obviously, we have a problem here.
The Colorado Oil and Gas Commission is aware of the situation and will probably be doing some additional testing in the area as soon as possible.
There's been concern raised about the methods to tap these valuable resources. They have been characterized as environmentally risky and inadequately regulated. Such reports are not accurate.
The neurological effects are very insidious.
Everybody was sick, including me. I have these lesions in my brain.
You get pains all over your body.
If you weren't able to do this hydraulic fracturing, how much more would we be dependent on foreign oil and terrorism?
I have one quote here from you that says that you're trying to do this in a way that doesn't damage the environment. But you also said recently that water contamination is inevitable.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Are those contradictory, or...?
Despite documented health risks and environmental impact, hydraulic fracturing is spreading across the globe.
It's amazing that what took Mother Nature millions of years to build can be destroyed in a few hours with a piece of heavy machinery.
What it's doing is searching for a problem that does not exist.
Whoa, Jesus Christ.
It's not supposed to do that.
Cut it. At any rate, what you just saw was the man's tap water burning the hair off his arm. That's what fracturing can do. So I think it's a good idea we kind of don't have it happen here. It can happen here. We have what's called a tar sands deposit that's called the Monterey tar sands. They come from Monterey. They stretch all the way down through here and through Cambria. If that ever happened here, guess what? The debate we have about desalinization would be moot because the entire aquifer would be completely polluted and permanently polluted. So I think we need to pass a resolution not to have it happen here. The second part is the industry response. You have that up? You have that up yet? That's it's called Connect the Dots.
Between new jobs and cleaner air, a manufacturing renaissance, and energy security, American natural gas. Fact is, America is now the world's #1 natural natural gas producer thanks to safe, proven hydraulic fracturing technology, making clean-burning domestic natural gas the fuel of choice. From advanced technology to a re-energized American economy, natural gas connects them all. Log on to learn more.
To which I say, proven to whom and why? I'm not quite sure what they're trying to say there, other than the fact that, you know, hey, let's keep going for natural gas despite the fact that it burns the hair off people's arms when you do fracturing and try to turn on your tap. So there's one more response.
Jason's grandparents built this ranch, and we worked hard to keep it in the family. So we do our best to protect what's ours. With all the stories out there, some people were surprised that we allowed fracking on our land. But we talked with experts and learned the facts about drilling for oil and natural gas. And guess what? It's safe. Safe for our land, our water, and the air. When you know the facts, you understand why we need this now and for the future.
Learn the facts at energyfromshale.org.
So that's the shale industry's response, which is basically just believe us, we know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about, so just go ahead and frack. The man, of course, who did the original film that we saw at the beginning of all of this, was offered $100,000 to fracture his land. He decided to go ahead and find out what fracturing was all about, and hence you got the information you got. It's also a consideration that I did want to mention. I was talking to an audience member about, actually Elizabeth, you guys all know her, about what fracturing's like, and it's an issue about net neutrality. Right now, currently, if you look at your television set, you will find a lot of pro-fracturing technology talked about. If you look at the internet, it's pretty much anti-fracturing. And that's what the difference between net neutrality and a corporate-controlled information system is all about. So, like I said, on your TV, you'll see fracturing, very pro. If you really look at the open-sourced information that anybody can use, you'll find that it's very much against. Anyway, I very much, based on that, urge you to go ahead and adopt the resolution to ban fracking in the Cambria area. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gruber, in your report, you were, I think, quite fair on either side of this issue, saying that you don't have nor researched any kind of an issue. I'd appreciate comments from the board.
Well, from my perspective, I have done some looking at hydraulic fracturing, and I've looked at it from the standpoint that there's some indications that it has some safety in certain circumstances. But the Monterey Shale formation is a different kind of a formation than is in the North Dakota area, in terms of the earthquake activity that's occurred over the years that have changed it from a solid formation to a fractured, somewhat fractured already situation. It seems to me that I like the concept that you put in here that said that we would oppose it until such time as they determine it's meets the health and safety. But right now, since water is our major concern, I would support going ahead with this resolution. Authorize the president to send a letter and modify that letter to meet that particular need that you had about having the county indicate that they believe it's against the health and safety of this particular area. It seems to note, I looked in, there's this thing that is attached to this fact sheet that is attached. It appears that there is considerable activity both north and south of us in the Monterey and Santa Barbara area, but not a lot in this particular area. And so, not just us, but the Paso Robles groundwater basin and others have some problems, and I think to err on the side of caution is good. And so all we're doing by this is indicating to the Board of Supervisors that we want them to consider it and make a determination and have them do a resolution to the state.
I
Director
would-
Robinette?
Thank you. Well, I would agree with, certainly, first of all, Director Cliff's observations too. And I would like to thank Jeff for bringing this here to us today. I am comfortable with the suggestion that you made. I think if we make it clear to the County Board of Supervisors, this is our board speaking, that we are not representing, in fact, the entire community. That was a little concern. But I think as a board, we can do this. Certainly, personally, I have very strong feelings that, more and more is being learned that is certainly hazardous and dangerous and not in the best interest of the environment of the people on fracking. So I would support it. And we've taken positions before on things that are very pertinent to Cambria. And I can remember working with Jim Webb and Mary when we were very concerned about the upset to the environment when there was the ultrasonic booms and that type of thing. We took certainly a very protective and strong position on that too. Again, based on our unique living right here with on the ocean, and so I certainly would think it would be a good idea for the County Board of Supervisors to see that we have an interest as they go forward on this in supporting protecting this area.
Thank you. I don't have, I appreciate you saying that because if it's coming from the board and not necessarily, I'm not representing my constituency there.
Right.
I definitely am, that language would represent my personal viewpoint. I mean, just because I don't like fracking, I don't think, but if it's a consensus of the board, we'll all work together. I'm for that. And Director Rice, just the few words after prohibition on fracking until the county can assure protection of the health and quality of life for residents, I think is non-directive. On the other hand, I think that this issue won't go away, and putting something like this in a file, it really doesn't have very much impact. It has a lot of impact when there's a specific permit or a specific activity that's being addressed. And so I don't want that to take us off the hook with this particular position. With that said, do we need a motion?
Yeah, I would move that we approve resolution number 2014 and authorize the president on behalf of the board to forward the resolution with the attached letter modified with the
As modified.
yeah, as modified.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with that passed. Does that do it? Let's see. You're welcome. Thank you, Jeff. With that done, we will adjourn.
Did you say you had those